I woke up. I had one of those days where I woke up at 5:30 in the morning after having a dream that I had a bunch of work to do, and then I couldn't get back to sleep because I knew I had a bunch of work to do. So I got up at 5:45 and started working, and then you know went through the morning and realized that oh my god, it's time to go to campus. So okay, I don't have a super fixed agenda for the day, so this can take however long sort of is useful to all of you who showed up today. Wow, that's really dirty. So I guess the problem with using a smartboard is people write in their indelible marker all over it. Super. Doesn't look weird at all. All right, I'll have to bring in cleaner for next time, or request this building be burned to the ground. I mean, that this board be cleaned. Okay, so basically, like usually what I do for, since we covered all the material, we don't have any new material coming up to the midterm, which is on Tuesday. So I usually just kind of start with Q&A, and then I've got some like example short answer questions that we can look at. But I'll just start with like any questions you have. If there's any concepts you want clarified, I'll go back into the slides, and I can clarify any concepts that you're kind of struggling with. Anything if you want to talk about the major lab, I can answer questions about that. It's like really open floor, and like I said, we don't have to take the whole hour and a half. If no one's asking questions, it's going to be a really, really short class. So yeah, please.
So the midterm, does it cover all the way up to structured observation?
Yes. So everything we've covered so far, I think it's like I had to grab my copy of the textbook because someone asked last class what chapters. And I think it's like chapters 1 through 7. Let me double check. There won't be a ton. Yeah. So basically 1 through 7, because we didn't cover quantitative data analysis, but we covered everything else. So yeah, chapters 1 through 7 in the textbook. Though again, I will stress, nothing in here that I didn't talk about will be on the test. Like I'm not gonna, and if something slips through, right? Because I have a bank of questions. I think I will go through them again. I think I've taken out anything from like the textbook bank that we didn't cover, or things from other years that I've used that maybe I talked about in a different way. I think I've weaned them out, and I'll go over them again before Tuesday. If something comes up and it's a question that like I maybe thought I talked about it and I actually didn't, the really nice thing with eClass is it's so easy for me to just null out that question, right? Like, so if anything shows up and you're like, oh my God, we didn't talk about this, Broussard lied, we'll fix it. Like, like they say in the media business, we'll fix it in post, right? I can always fix stuff later on if I screwed something up. And you had a question.
That was one of my questions. You could clarify the difference between nominal and difference.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so it's super easy. The nominal definition, right, is basically just almost like a dictionary or plain kind of like common sense explanation of something, right? So, I mean, if you're talking about, I don't know, because I've used religiosity a bunch of times, the nominal definition of religiosity is, how religious someone is, right? The operational definition is basically how are you going to actually measure it, right? So, if we're talking about the operational definition of religiosity, you would say that you're going to ask survey questions relating to, religious identity, religious service attendance, frequency of prayer, frequency of frequency of reading religious texts, right? It's basically like the operational definition is how are you going to get, the information, right? So you've got your concept. How are you going to turn that concept into a variable? That's your operational definition, right? Oh, so we answered the first question. What's the difference? One is a plain, 2 in 1. One is a plain text. One is obviously a how are you going to actually measure things? Okay, that was easy. Other questions? Yeah, sure.
Can you explain internal reliability?
I don't want to. Sure, let's pull up the slides. Okay, so that's the wrong course. There we go. The reliabilities are always fun, and it helps me to have my slides handy. Okay, so quantitative research. Let's pull that guy up. Okay, let's find reliability. I don't know what slide it's on, so I'm just going to go through them all. Okay. Okay. Internal reliability. So, basically, the idea with internal reliability is if you have, within a kind of study that you're doing, right? So within one sitting or within, say, one survey, one interview, whatever you happen to be doing, whether two kind of measures, right? So multiple measures that are administered in one sitting are consistent, right? So they're giving you something that you would consider a consistent result. So, right, if you're talking again about religiosity and you phrased one of your questions as, how spiritual are you? How I consider myself very spiritual, strongly agree to strongly disagree. And then your second measure is like, my religious identity is, and you list a bunch of them, like, so Catholic, Protestant, whatever. And then you have another one that, a frequency of religious service attendance, weekly through, weekly plus through never. And what you get is someone says they're very spiritual, like, I strongly agree that I'm very spiritual, but I never attend religious services, right? And you were hoping that your question about spirituality and religious service attendance would give you results that were kind of similar, but you've got one that's like, okay, this person says what I thought would be, they're saying they're very religious, but on the other one, I'm saying, they're saying they're not religious at all. So you'd be like, you're lacking internal reliability in that case because your two measures are telling you something completely different, right? So something's wrong with your measurement tool there. Or say you're asking like, religious service attendance, and then I consider religion very important to not important at all, and you get there, they attend weekly and they consider religion very important, then you've got internal reliability because those two measures are aligned, right? They're telling you basically the same thing. So you're measuring your concept correctly.
Is it kind of like, I see it as very similar as like conference, but with me, I'm just wondering if
It's just within one particular kind of, like, you would take one case, right? So like if I interviewed you, right, I could say that, your answers are internally valid. Sometimes you might, someone might be telling you something incorrect or they're misinterpreting the question. So in that case, your measure in that particular one sitting would be not valid, right? Because maybe they're misinterpreting the question or something like that. But like internal validity only has to do with one particular like subject rather than, concurrent validity or and these other things that could be lots of different, multiple kind of cases. Does that make sense? Okay. I think you were next, and then we'll go back here.
And in terms of like the written response, how do you want it to be done? Do you want like a paragraph, or do you want like bullet points?
It's really, I leave that to your discretion in the sense that, how to put this? Bullet points can be a little risky because sometimes people don't include enough information. I love bullet points because it's the super easiest thing for me to mark in the world. So, if you can get your point through in bullet points, you're the best. Because there's a lot of marking to do in a course like this. But I don't put word limits on anything or like even a structure. And I know that can be disconcerting to undergraduate students. Just get the information down in whatever form you feel best about, and I will work with that. But I'm not looking for like 100 words or 150 words or any kind of structure. Just get it down in as short a form as you can so that I don't have to read, War and Peace again. And that'll be good enough, right? So if it's bullet points, even lengthy bullet points, that's fine. But whatever structure you want, I put no form on it because just get it done in whatever way works for you.
Yeah, what's the difference between inter-observer versus intra-observer consistency?
So inter-observer is between two people or multiple people, right? So between different, like think internet, same thing as international, between nations. Intra is the same person, right? So, if I am I recording the information the same way every single time I do something, right? Let's say you were doing structured observation Am I, every time I do a different person's kind of leadership style in my structured observation, am I recording that data the same way? Or is there some variance in how I record the data? But just me versus like, I have a team of people and I'm worried about my 15 people recording the information differently or asking questions slightly differently.
Also, another question about studying with the textbook. Do you just recommend looking up older words or strategy?
The way that I've always thought textbooks were useful, but this is very personal to me, is, especially for a class like mine, is if there's something that I said that makes absolutely no sense to you, and you're still unclear about a concept, go clarify it in the textbook. But other than that, like don't worry, like, let me see if I can find, like a box that I didn't talk about, like that kind of thing. Don't worry about those, that kind of stuff. Anything that's included in the slides, worry about.
Just mainly on slides and a textbook second.
That, and I always think of the textbook as like, crazy Professor Broussard explained this so badly, I'm so confused. Now I'm going to go to someone who actually knows what they're doing and wrote a textbook about it. So here it is, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other question? Yeah, please.
So just want to double check, we don't need to focus on like things in the textbook, we should focus on the lectures, like we don't even need the textbook if we don't.
Did you not buy the textbook? No, I'm just, that's fine. Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm teasing you. I wouldn't have bought the textbook either. I only have this because the publisher keeps sending me free copies of it. So they're like, do you want to use our textbook? I'm like, I already use your textbook. Stop mailing me more copies of it. But yeah, you don't need it if you've like been in class and paying attention and keeping up with the lectures. You should be okay. Yeah. I'll come back to you in a second.
Since quasi-experiments are uncontrolled and like we're not really controlling elements of the experiment, would that be kind of field experiment using under field experiment?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And then, like, is there a difference between field experiments and quasi-experiments, or are they just gonna be something? That's like one thing I like, if it's on a test and it's like, is it a quasi-experiment?
There won't be that. I wouldn't ask you that kind of finicky a question, because even like, you'd have to have a really specific case study and looking at it to be like, oh, is this a quasi-experiment or a field experiment? I won't ask you that depth of a question, because I feel like it could be really hard, from a paragraph to tell the difference. And that's the kind of question that is kind of designed to make people answer wrong. And that's not my goal. I try to pick questions that are answerable without you, having a panic attack. That's my goal, right? I'm not trying to make you do bad. If you do that, it's hopefully not on me. Although I am the instructor for the course, so maybe it is. I don't know. You had another question,
I
right?
have two about like the format of the actual exam.
Okay.
Are we able to jump back? and
Yes.
different questions?
100%. I am not. I don't understand why people lock you out of jumping back and forth, especially in social science classes. You flag the questions you don't know, come back to them at the end, all good.
Okay, and then for like, I'm assuming all of the questions are gonna be long answer format, or are they gonna be multiple?
30 multiple choice and then 4 short answer. 2 of them are concept questions like the one I had on the screen a second ago, so like concept. 2 of them are skill based. So basically it'll give you like a very short scenario. Like this is Professor Broussard's research question. Operationalize his variable. Like what are the variables? Give a nominal operational definition of each, and boom. Or Dr. Broussard is doing this kind of study. Write some survey questions.
Okay, and then for the long answer ones, where it's more concept based, do you want us to use examples in them, or just explain what it is and what it means?
So what I'll say is it doesn't hurt to use examples, because if you use an example, it's sometimes like, let's say you didn't quite get the wording right on how you defined it. If you put in an example and the example makes sense, it's much easier for me to be like, oh yeah, the wording's a little off, but that's probably stressy, panic stress. But I can see that you understand the concept. So the examples are super helpful to me. In like, if it's not there, you can still get the full marks if it's well explained, but I don't think it's a bad idea. Just then I'm like, You know, if your wording's a little bit off or there's a typo that makes the sentence incomprehensible, I can still be like, oh, I can clearly see that this person understands. You had that was 2 questions?
Yeah.
Okay, that was your 2 questions. You're being these are very easy questions. Yeah, please.
What's the distribution of the different chapters within the?
Okay, so there's basically an equal number of questions pulled out of all of those chapters. For the 30 multiple choice, they're kind of assigned by eClass at random, but it should be fairly even because the number of questions for each chapter is even. So it might skew a little bit one way or the other, but eClass is usually pretty good about doing random things. For the short answer, I'd have to look, but it's pretty, like, there's a balance of questions in there, but because there's only 2 on concepts, it could be from anywhere, and I can't, you know, anywhere in the kind of 7 chapters, I can't guarantee where it's going to come from. The 2 skill ones are locked, right? There's just 2 of them. So, but they're 2 skills that you've done, you know, in the labs and mini labs. So it's all quite familiar, I hope. If not, that's on you for not keeping up. But I know you have been keeping up. I'm just teasing. Yeah, please.
What's the difference between structured versus unstructured observation?
One is structured and one is unstructured. No, no. I mean, structured observation, right? You have like that table, and you have like a an observation schedule, right? That's like, I'm going to, okay, that person smiled. A smile is a code 3, and that's okay. So in this 15-second kind of interval that I'm logging, that I got a 3. They told a joke. That's a code 7 in that box. Whereas unstructured is like, you know, after this class, I will write down my observations. It's like, the class was, okay, the desks were arranged in a weird way, which really made me feel awkward and kind of made the students feel awkward too. The questions came mostly from the front row and all from female students. You know, like, so I would write down my observations about what happened. And that would be an unstructured observation where I didn't have like a code set beforehand.
How many types of structured observations are there? I know there's field experiments, but is there any more?
I mean, yeah, I mean, most of them would kind of probably categorized as kind of a field experiment or a field observation. I'm trying to think if there's any others, because everywhere I've seen structured observation done, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if there's anything else. It's like you sitting there observing people. So yeah, I think like a field, or you might call it, it's not an ethnography because ethnography is richer than structured observation. But basically, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if a field experiment is the right word because you're not adding a kind of a variable in. But it would be like an in-place observation, or almost like a non-participant observation, I guess would be the better way, because you shouldn't be participating if you're doing structured observation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you write the test questions to try to trick us, or are you nice about them and, you know?
I try to be nice about them. I mean, with multiple choice, right? Multiple choice inherently is designed to give you like the answer, a distractor, and then 2 nonsense kind of answers. So there is at least one thing that is kind of plausible but wrong on most of them. Like it's usually not. I mean, if you know the material, it should be super evident what the right one is, right? It's not like, I'm trying to think of like what really like trick questions are that people use on multiple, like there's no dates, right? So it's not like, what year was Karl Marx born? Was it this year? This, and they're all like within 4 years of each other. No, like who said this questions, right? Where it's like 4 people that's inherently meant to, you know, is it Karl Marx or Marx Karl, right? You know, like, I don't know. That's a terrible trick. It would not work at all. There's nothing inherently that I'm trying to screw you up. Multiple choice kind of is designed a little bit to screw you up. But I try not to like create questions that are so difficult that nobody can get them, right? That all the answers seem correct. Like, you know, it's usually one that's pretty obviously right, one distractor that could be right, and if you have low self-esteem, you might kind of start to question yourself and, drive yourself crazy and think, okay, this is a tip. If you're thinking like that I'm asking this question on some kind of super deep level, like, what if the word it actually doesn't mean it, but it means something other than it? You've overthought the question. And I almost guarantee you, I have not put that much thought into any of these questions. Like I haven't written them so that you would need to like decode my secret language or what was my secret intention behind the question. I don't write those kinds of questions, and students often think I have, but it's just, I don't know, maybe you've been hurt before. I don't know. But I'm not like intending some deep meaning behind, something. It's usually the plain reading of the question is the correct reading. So I don't know if that helps, but I'm not trying to write like something cryptic where I'm using a word cryptically. I try to only use questions that are pretty straightforward, and either you know the concept or you don't. And if you don't, yeah, you mean abacadabra, right? But hopefully does that help at all? Okay. I really am not, I don't make it my mission in life to create questions that cause students more stress than I have to, right? Other questions? Nothing. Yeah.
While we have time, can you just go for the major lab once more?
The major lab, is there a particular kind of component that you're, the rubric? Okay. Why don't I do that in 1 minute? Why don't I look at a couple of these short answer questions since I got it up on the screen, and then I can go back and kind of look at the rubric really quickly, or very slowly. We have lots of time. I don't see. Okay, so we answered that one. You'll see that these questions are like, what are 3 threats to the external validity in an experiment? So yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know one of them is, I'd have to even go back. I don't even remember. See, this is why I have a key that tells me what I'm supposed to do, and I look it up. But right, like in the slides, right, there are things that can affect the validity of an experiment, right? Things like reactivity, and just find any 3 and you would be good there. So think like what causes a problems for an experiment, right? I could probably go back and find these in the slides pretty quickly. That's in research design. Because I don't remember off the top of my head. Let's see, I don't even remember where it is in the. This is why these are in my practice questions, because I didn't actually like this question, so I took it out eventually. Yeah, I don't even remember where that is, but like just think, what are some problems potentially with experimental design, right? These are like the time order. I just don't remember where it is on the slides. Spurious variable, right? That you have a spurious variable that's affecting things. The time order is wrong. And there's the third one that I don't remember, and I can't find it on the slides because I'm trying to go too fast. Like these would be threats to the validity of a lab experiment. I just can't remember where it is. So basically if it doesn't, if it doesn't meet these criterias, right? So correlation, right? If they're, the variables aren't moving in a correlated way, if the time order is wrong, or if you have a spurious variable introduced, right? These could all be kind of problems to the validity of an experiment, right? Yeah, please.
Would social desirability bias be also?
You could also throw social desirability bias. Yeah, that's a form of kind of reactivity, so you could throw that in there. That would be, like I said, I don't remember exactly where I put it on these slides, but yeah. Anyway. Anything like that, right? That would potentially cause problems to an experimental design. Yeah, go for it. Okay, so The multiple choice are not, because I put a selection of multiple choice questions in there. The practice short answer are, right? So if you go through it a couple times, you'll get the same multiple choice questions, but you'll get a different set of, I think I have 9 different short answer questions that are possible. So yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah, for all of these, basically, just like think of 3 things that would affect external validity of an experiment, and then kind of list them, right? It's not a big deal. Like, you know, I might throw in again, I took this question out because I didn't like it, but I might, 3 threats to external validity in an experiment and why they are a threat. So you have to explain it a little bit. That's all I would say, right? And all you have to do, think of 3, and as long as they're on my list, and I think there's like 8 things on this one, you would be good. Okay, good. Oops. Oh, discuss the significance of replication in quantitative research. What are some of the challenges of replication? So why is this is straightforward, right? Why is replication important in quantitative research? Well, I mean, quite simply because A, it validates the methodology used, right? It validates the research tools, and it allows people to check to see basically whether a person's data and procedures were correct and are therefore giving kind of real data, right? Good data about the world. What are some of the key challenges? I mean, in replication, one of them is funding, right? I talked about funding. Replication studies are not very popular, so they are, challenging. With sociological quantitative research, right? A lot of things are cross-sectional, so you're not going to get exactly the same group, so it can be hard to repeat it. There can be some variables that people didn't anticipate that worked into the first one that can make it challenging to fully reproduce the study, right? Think of the social class elements of the marshmallow experiment. But yeah, basically those are kind of 3 examples. If you give 1 or 2 of those, you would be good there. And I'll go through the questions on the weekend and make sure I put where I'm putting the marks. So like 2.5 on this, 2.5 on that, right? So that where the grade distribution is. You can kind of assume a 2-part question, it's half and half, but I'll make sure I try to go through and put it in on all of the available questions. But they're all really straightforward, right? It's like, what's the significance of replication? Pretty straightforward. Key challenges, kind of know why replication's difficult in quantitative research is pretty easy, right? And again, you won't see this question because this is among the questions that I created for, practice quiz, but it'll be all questions like this, right? They're all pretty straightforward. It's just conceptual. They're just conceptual at the end of the day. So if you know the concepts, you'll be able to answer them, and you can probably, I will say this, not to make me sound like a saint, I'm pretty generous in how I give the marks out. Like, I tend to be looking to give you marks rather than take them away. So if you say something that's, reasonable, you'll get at least part marks and probably, more than that. Because I'm just like, try to give marks where I can. And I've never found it necessary to like dock marks away to like get an average or anything. I don't need to do that. It always works itself out. Or I have a fight with the chair about why the grades are so high. It's like, they were great students. What am I going to do? So all good. Now you're leaving. No, I'm just kidding. I've had enough of this, Broussard. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Other questions? Okay. Yeah, please.
Could you explain, there's like one of the slides in quantitative sampling was about sampling problems?
Oh, yeah, let me find it. Quantitative sampling. Sampling problems. Did I pass it? Oh, it's this one. Okay, like, I wouldn't worry too much about this. So, basically, right, you can have, these ones are pretty straightforward, right? Data collection error, data's recorded incorrectly. So when you're recording something, right, it's picked up wrong, like something gets, this is usually like human error. So like if you're doing like online surveys, you don't usually get data collection errors. Data processing errors, right? You put in the incorrect codes and then you like deal with things incorrectly. Sampling errors, right? Sometimes this can be, you know, sampling errors in terms of your kind of how you've selected your population. You haven't selected them, you know, randomly or whatever kind of like, okay, it's like some of the examples, right, that were, I think they're in the textbook, or maybe I talked about them too. It's like, you know, you are doing simple random sampling and you've got basically people assigned, you know, numbers. So, you know, and you say you have people who are into politics and not into politics, and they're like 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So the people not into politics are even numbered, and the people are odd numbered, and the people who are, you know, interested in politics are even numbered. And then you do something like you say, well, I'm going to pick, you know, every fourth case, right? You end up picking only people who are even numbered, so you only get that, right? So you've made a basically sampling error, right? So in that case, you know, for whatever reason, you know, you misconstrued how you do your sampling. You've gotten a skewed sample, right? So you've made an error in the way you set up your sampling and it got skewed. Your population for some reason wasn't fully randomized. So you got more of kind of one group than another. And you almost always get some, like no one ever does a perfect sample. There's always some kind of sampling error that you have. It's just part of the business. Sampling related error. I mean, essentially a sampling related error, again, is some kind of, you know, maybe the population select or the sample selected is incorrect. The sampling method is incorrect, right? You've chosen an incorrect sampling method for the kind of project you're doing. So, you know, you've chosen like, I don't know, the really absurd, like a snowball sample when you should have done like a, you know, multi-stage cluster analysis or something like that. Or you've just picked like, you know, even something as simple like you're trying to do undergraduate students at universities in you know, Canada, and for some reason you selected like Alberta Bible College as one of your Alberta colleges, right? Not a major university. So, you know, as kind of you've made a mistake in how you've selected your sample, or which sampling method you've done, right? So rather than like an error in terms of how the sample is set up, it's like what you're sampling there is kind of a problem. And yeah, data collection and data processing are super straightforward. I don't think there's a question on these, but if there is, I will make sure it's clean. So I'm going to go through the whole base again. Yeah, please.
Do we have to know the formula for calculating the representation sample?
I am not going to ask you that. Absolutely not. It is there so that you can see it, and you know, that's why I gave you I'm not even expecting you to run it for your own like major lab. That's why I gave you that little link to that calculator for sample size, so that you could just like come up with a reasonable sample size based on what you think your population is without having to know the math.
Should we know the simple random sample, like the sampling ratio stuff though?
I don't think I have anything that nitpicky, to
Okay.
be honest. I'm more concerned that you understand what simple random sampling is than specifically like the ratio. That's pretty nitpicky. And, you know, when you go on to advanced quantitative methods, you can take that with Phil or Michelle, and then they can make you do that stuff. We're just introducing you to methods, right? Not deep dive into it. This is the preview for the classes you'll take later. Maybe. Or you're all like, nope, out. Okay. Any other, before I go over the major lab rubric one more time, any other questions? Okay. Perfect. Let's find the rubric for major lab 1. I know this is going to be a very dynamic video on YouTube. Literally see the same window the entire time. I cannot find the window that is in. Where is it? Oh, nope, not there. Okay, well, no worries. Maybe I'll open it in Edge instead. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. Perfect. Okay. I mean, was there any particular element you were worried about, or you just wanted kind of a general look at it again? Okay. So we can do that again. Okay, so I'll put it this way. Maybe I will. No, I'll just do it this way. I was like, should I side by side it with the assignment description? No, it'll be fine. Okay, so yeah, the research question, right? Basically, so it's worth 2, right? So basically, you're going to get a score out of 10, basically for that section. So what are we looking for, right? For excellent, right? The research question and explanation are, it's a good question. It's a solid question. Has all of the elements that you're kind of expecting for a question, right? You've really thought about how to craft a research question, right? So you have critical engagement. You really understand how a research question. So this is like a really, it's all a little bit subjective, but it's a really great, really well-crafted research question, which, for me, I can immediately see you've put a lot of thought into it, and you understand, all the elements, right? You have the research question itself suggests what you're going to be looking at, what kind of population you would be talking about, and that everything in it is feasible, right? None of it sounds kind of vague or undoable, right? That's, an excellent, not too hard to get. I will post, the one thing I forgot to do, which I meant to do this morning, I will do this afternoon before I do anything else. I will post at least one example of a past student's work. I've been meaning to do this, but finding it in my chaotic file system, which I now have like 15 years of files on OneDrive, and it's very insane. I will post a really good one so you can see what a great one would look like. I mean, so, proficient, I expect most people kind of to hit in proficient, right? There's critical engagement, right? It's a well-crafted research question. It might have a few little flaws or terms that are undefined. It might be a little bit too broad or too narrow, but generally, right, it's well done. Satisfactory, right? The research question is fine. It suggests, at least 2 kind of concepts that can be researched, but it might be kind of too big, too broad, too narrow in some ways, or, my impression would be that this might be a little bit hard to kind of research in an effective way. So the research question isn't well tuned. I don't expect anyone, almost everybody having done this now, you've had a chance to do it and to kind of redo it for mini lab 2. I don't actually expect anyone to hit in limited or poor. It almost never happens because most of the time people have worked out the kinks by now. But yeah, I mean, basically you might have a research question that's limited or poor, right? You don't understand how a research question works, and it's, pretty unclear, for your quantitative research question, you've ended up in like a qualitative kind of question. So you don't understand, how a research question and methods are related. Does that make sense? Okay. Perfect. You went to St. FX. I knew you must be smart. No, that was the high school I went to as well. So back before they had a hockey program and an arena. That tells you how old I am. Okay, so the plan for the research. Okay, so basically, right, this is the part where you explain how the research project is going to be kind of done, why it's important. Also, you should have that kind of element in there as well. But you're going to, so excellent understanding of how you might do the research. So you're proposing a methodology that's very well tuned. Your concepts and variables are precise, right? So, you're explaining what are your concepts, what are your variables, and you're doing it very, very well. And, this is the tough part. The operationalization shows that you really understand operationalization. So like when people have seen comments, I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure how you're going to operationalize this on your mini lab. That's what you want to work, on. Like if I'm like, I'm not sure how you're going to operationalize that variable to go from, say, a satisfactory into your proficient and your excellent. And I will stress again, I give half marks and 3/4 marks and quarter marks in all of these. Thank you, leaf blower man. Perfect timing as always. Okay. I mean, in past years, I've been on the quad and it's been rodeo time around this time of year for Bar None. So they have like fire engines and clowns and stuff. So this is not as bad, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, and here again, the distinction between these, your concepts variables are clear and understandable. So it's clear what you're talking about. And it's, you've operationalized it well, but there still might be, some work to do, right? It's not a really excellent operationalization. There might be some way in which I still think, it's well done, but it could be a little bit better, right? And I'll tell you this in comments. Yeah, for proficient or satisfactory, right? You've adequately defined your variables, and it's a satisfactory understanding of how you put all of these things together at the end. It's really annoying. Can't they do this at night when I'm not here? Okay, I mean, that's cruel, asking someone to blow leaves at night. Probably not that safe. But does that, I know it's very subjective, but it is kind of like, how well have you done this? And that's kind of my judgment of it. Is that making sense to you? Because unfortunately, I'm the one who marks it, so it's my subjective sense of how well you've done it. And again, I'm kind of hoping, having gone through the mini labs, that no one falls into limited and poor, right? That's almost always when I see limited and poor, it's people who either have not been doing it or been ignoring my feedback, or completely change their project at the last minute and try to throw something random together. Usually because they haven't been listening to feedback along the way. Yeah, please. Oh, hells to the yes. Yeah. No, everything, like your research question that you've been using, your operational definitions, you can use all of that again. Yeah, please. Yes, but we'll have to add more of them, right? But yeah, you can use all the same stuff. And the goal is, honestly, my goal is that you build this up so that when you go to put it together, it's super easy, right? And you're not like reinventing the wheel or anything. You're bringing a polished-ish product. Yeah, please.
When it comes to like operationalizing, is there like an example of doing that? Because I always blank on it.
Like of how to operationalize something. Okay, so again, you're going to take your concept, right? And then you're going to turn it into things that you can measure, right? So let's think of, I don't know, depression, right? Now, what I've recommended to people who've like wanted to talk about depression is that you go find a sort of way other people have done it. So something like PHQ-9, right, which is a 9-question scale that measures depression. So your operationalization of, say, depression, right, is I'm going to operationalize the concept of depression using, questions taken from, or the entire thing, of the PHQ-9 assessment of depression, right? Which is a 9-question scale that measures various kind of aspects of mental health, right? That's what an operationalization looks like. If you want to make up your own questions, right? Like, I don't know, you're going to talk about frequency of exercise, right? You could make up, how often, I'm going to ask them about frequency of kind of exercise, minutes spent walking a day, maybe how many steps they take, if they have a step count. You can kind of come up with it, but you just kind of tell in the operationalization, like, how are you going to measure the concept, right?
So like, because I was looking at anxiety and I used like what's it called, like an actual like psychology like assessment.
Yeah.
That would be operationalizing.
Yeah, so your operationalization is that you're using like ASCS.
Okay.
Is it 15? Is it, or 10? There's 2 of them, 10 and 20, I think.
Yeah. I'm using the 21.
Yeah, and that's all you do, right? Okay. So see, it sounds terrible, but it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah, no, it's not scary. It's no problem.
Okay, yeah, please. I am working diligently on it. I only have so much time, and this is why I wake up at 5:30 in the morning feeling like I have work I need to get done, because I'm like, all right, you guys are second in line after I finish marking the midterm for SOS 376, which I am also making progress on because you're also in that class. As soon as I finish that, so hopefully on the weekend, I probably am going to abandon my family on Saturday and come in and do work, so that I can get you that back in time so you can keep working on it. Yeah, but hopefully no later than Saturday, if nothing else happens. Yesterday people wanted to talk to me. Well, this is always a problem. The worst phrase in my entire life is, can I just have 10 minutes of your time? because then it's like an hour of my time is gone inevitably. Because it's like, okay, can you do this and this and this? And it's like, fine. Can you buy this for me using the credit card for the center? Fine. Only going to take like an hour to do all of these things. So hopefully nothing else happens. I'm planning to go hide in one of my 2 secret offices for the rest of the day. Yes, I have 2 secret offices on campus, and no, you cannot know where they are. And then I should be able to get those back hopefully quickly. So survey questions are pretty quick to look at, hopefully, unless people make huge mistakes, in which case then it takes forever. But I'm hoping I've primed you enough with survey questions that won't be a problem. I guess I can keep going through this. No? Okay. I mean, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like the information letter is super easy. Make sure all that stuff is on there. I might not even read every single word you write, as long as all of, like, honestly, do you have all of these things on there? You'll probably get a 5. If something is missing, like, then, you might get a 4. You have to be missing a bunch of stuff, or it's like looks completely random and doesn't look well done at all for me to take marks off. I usually give 5 out of 5 as long as everything's there. See, I even have it filled out in advance. This is how I forgot to take it out. That I just had it filled out in advance, so everyone gets a 5. So, it's a pretty easy part.
Sorry, then it looks like the survey question portion of it is like a survey that you actually have to be able to do, or it might just be questions about and like possible answers that you would just agree. I see this from like a non-tech savvy.
Oh, does it have to be like I can click on it? Oh God, no, just write them, plain text. Like, I just want to see the tool, right? I don't care about please don't try to execute some, give me a link to SurveyMonkey and an actual survey I can do. That will annoy me more than anything, because then I have to leave my workflow. Yeah, just the questions, just your 10 questions written out in text form. And yeah, include the questions and the answer sets, because sometimes people leave out the answer sets, and that's very confusing, because then I don't know how you wanted me to answer things. It's like, are these all open questions? Then this is a terrible survey. So just give me the tool and the answer sets. For that section, sometimes I think I have a word limit on it. Don't worry about the word limit. If you're over 250 words on your survey, don't futz about it too much. So, okay. It's pretty straightforward, right? Like with the research tools, it's just how good they are, right? Do they work? Are they tailored to answering your research question? It's straightforward. And then the sampling method is honestly you just have to propose to me a sampling method. It can be like 4 sentences. Does it make sense? Have you chosen an appropriate one? If you give me snowball sampling for something that snowball sampling doesn't work for, you're going to get a limited pour. As long as it kind of makes sense and your explanation for why you're using it kind of makes sense, you'll be in the 3, 4, 5 category. So, sorry, I saw your hand.
For the research questions or the sample survey questions that we have to include,
Yeah.
if we're taking them from another source, how do you want us to cite it? Or
Don't worry about doing a footnoted citation. Just tell me right in your operationalization section that you're taking it from, PHQ-9 for depression or something like that. Yeah, don't worry about futzing the really technical stuff. You can do that later on when you're doing a real research project. For now, just tell me, right? So if I see questions, that are snap 4 questions and I don't know that that's where you took it from, then I might be like, where did this come from? But as long as you've stated it's somewhere in the document that's where they're coming from, that's fine. Sure.
could you maybe break down what you want us to do in question 2 of the assignment? Because maybe I'm just getting confused, but there's a lot of words that just don't make sense.
Okay. I will word the words. I just have to find it. Okay. Okay. So a proposal for how you will conduct the research, right? So you just have to say how would you actually do this research, right? Is it a survey, right? Is it a lab experiment, participant observation? What population would you be surveying, right? University students, police officers, whatever, right? Just that's, what is the research project and how would you actually, because you've got your research question on top, how are you going to do the research, right? So that's just your methodology, right? You're showing me that you've chosen a methodology and that it kind of makes sense, right? Define the concepts that are most important to your study, right? So what are you actually trying to measure, right? So let's say, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that people have proposed, but let's say you're trying to measure like, I don't know, like religiosity and age, right? You want to know how religiosity changes as people move through the life course, right? So you want to define your concepts of, everyone's walking out on me. I feel so sad. You want to define your concepts are age and religiosity, right? So you want to define all of those. You want to give in the defining your concepts, right? Your nominal definitions and your operational definitions. And then, like what is and kind of related to the operational definitions, right? How are you actually going to, and this last part, you need to explain how you're going to operationalize it, right? So how are you going to turn your concepts, whether you have 2 or 3 or 10, into actual data, right? So, again, like you're going to use the PHQ-9 to measure depression or the ASCS-20 to measure anxiety, right? Or your own kind of set of questions to measure some concept that you're interested in. Just like how are you actually going to do it, right? Does that make sense so far?
The only thing I'm a bit confused on is like, so we provide like a nominal and operational definition, right?
Yeah.
Because for mine, like for example, I'm doing drug use and religion, religious affiliation. So I'm just confused because like for the operational definition, I'm using, I forget the name of it, the drug testing addictions.
Sure. I think I suggested it to you, right?
For the religiosity one, I was just gonna like originally in my mini lab, I put just like one question that I would ask.
Sure.
Do you just want us to put one question, or do you want us to find like an actual test or like a bunch of questions, or?
So that would depend on so I think for drug use, it makes sense because there are like drug use evaluation kind of tools. For something like religiosity or religious affiliation, right? I think you were just asking like straight affiliation. You might want to think of some more kind of depth questions on religion too, right? So you could say that you're going to ask, survey questions about kind of religious affiliation, importance of religion to the person, service attendance, prayer, right? And I don't know, whatever else, right? Rather than me kind of going through the list. So you just have to say like, this is how you're going to do it, right? So you're going to ask questions in these kind of categories, right? About, rather, you don't have to like list every single question you're going to ask, but you should kind of list like the categories of questions you might be asking, right? So about identity, like those. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And does that make sense of everything that's there? You explain how you operationalize the research and justify why this method would be the best. Yeah. So, why, is a survey, why is a survey a good way of doing this? Why does this fit the particular project? And so I'm there like looking, do you understand the different methodologies and why you would use one over the other? So provide, and just stressing like what should be in here already, but just to state it out, provide the nominal and operational definitions for all of the variables you're looking at, right? So, just kind of straightforwardly, I think, does that make more sense now? Okay. So.
I'm kind of confused. So, for my example, loneliness, for example.
Yeah.
The indicator of your loneliness, the nominal would be like the dictionary definition, kind of, and the operational would be the measurement tool.
Yeah, so you're using a version of the UCLA Loneliness Index, right? Yeah, so the operational is, your nominal is just like, what do we mean by loneliness? Like it's the feeling of not having anyone around you. I don't know. Go to dictionary.com and pull up the definition of loneliness for nominal. And then for operational, it's like, I'm going to use, this tool or these questions, right? And maybe, it's not a bad idea to say I'm going to use like the 10 questions on the loneliness index or ever many it has. I can't remember.
And second question.
Yeah.
For the practice, you said which of the following definitions of a concept describes in words what a concept means? Would that be nominal definitions? Because I got this one wrong.
Well, I'm trying to remember. Let me see the question. So this is a multiple choice question. Yeah, I think that's probably the nominal definition. Wow, your phone is so heavy.
What?
Weighs a ton. Sorry, I have like a Pixel 4a, which I smashed into 1,000 pieces yesterday, and it now cuts my finger.
What do you have against Apple?
I just
AirPods, iPhone.
don't like them. I'm currently using, because I honestly shattered it so much it was cutting my finger, so I'm using my wife's old like iPhone SE, and I feel like I'm playing with a Fisher-Price toy. It's like a baby phone. I hate Apple. I just don't like it. It's a long-standing bias I have against toys that are meant for adult use for some reason. Maybe the same reason I don't understand Disney adults. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's been a very painful day so far using this Apple device. Like I said, I feel like I'm playing with like you give your kid like this little Fisher-Price phone that has buttons that do one thing. I feel like that's it. Sorry, I saw you had a question.
How does the structured observation description differ from how you're going to explain how to operate?
I mean, yeah, so, I mean, in terms of like a structured observation, that would be your methodology. Like the operationalization of like, say like leadership style, you would say that you're going to use structured observation using your observation schedule that has, 15 different categories, and you're going to, in 3-minute intervals, note every 15 seconds what's happening using this kind of tool, right? And then the tool would be over, like if you were doing structured observation, the tool then would be over in the like fourth part, right? But you would say like I have my, this. If you were doing this, you'd have to have that tool, ready for here, and then you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to, operationalize it by observing, in 3-minute intervals every 15 seconds. I'm going to note down what's happening using this schedule. And then, I'm going to do this for a total of, 5 or 10 repetitions for each person, right? Or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That took longer than I thought. All good. If there are no other questions, I'll stick around if you want to chat afterwards, but, might as well, take that extra 20 minutes and go buy yourself a coffee in a relaxed rather than stressful fashion. Slowly saunter over to Cameron, to the Starbucks, and feel like you're okay to wait in line for 15 minutes to get a basic cup of coffee. You have the time. And yeah, like I said, if you have other questions, do feel free to email me. Just a reminder, I have extended the major lab till Sunday, I think the 22nd at midnight. So you have some extra time to work on it so you can bring back questions next week. Hello.
Hello, I have a small question. Next semester, you're teaching 377 Sociology of Youth,
I am.
and it's been full, and I've been like on the wait list.
Okay.
Just in case like I can't get in, do you think there's any way I could be let into the class?
So the way it works in sociology, and I don't know how the other departments are, Pam, who is the keeper of all things, will not let me add students, but almost assuredly